If you're in a position right now where you are conflicted, you're confused, you're wondering, is this person the one? You're having all kinds of feelings. A little sabbatical could do you some good.
It's better with us two. We're better together.
Hello, everybody.
What's
Welcome
up?
back. The podcast is all about building bridges in every area of your life.
Mm-hmm.
And today we're going to be talking about how we almost broke up 5 times.
Yeah. That's right. Continuing this story.
Yes.
We've been like piecemealing this story, like not been sequential.
It has not been sequential. It's just been like pieces all over the place. And so this is one of the pieces that you'll just have to figure out where it goes. Yeah, this is part of our story, and it's a very real part of our story, and we've mentioned it a few different times. And so we figured we'd just zero in on it and let you guys know, like, what went down, how it happened, you know?
Yeah. What's in it for the listener, babe? Like, or the viewer? Like, what are they going to get out of this if they rock with us till the end?
What are you going to get out of it? You are going to get a scintillating joke
At the end.
But also, hopefully, you'll, a window into our story will help you understand that you're not alone and that the Lord is a master storyteller, and trusting your story to Him is the best thing that you can do. And that's probably something that we hope you get out of all of our podcasts, is that the Lord is, He's the best writer. He's the best author, the author and finisher of our faith. He's the best author that ever existed. And so trusting your story to Him should be a no-brainer, but sometimes it takes encouragement, and we are here to be that encouragement if you need it.
That's good. I would add that I think this podcast episode is going to be like an advertisement for taking it slow and taking a step back from a relationship if you feel led to do that.
Oh, that's so good.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like sometimes you got to do that.
You have to do that.
Sometimes you have to do that.
Yeah, agreed.
And we'll share our story and the benefits of that for us, and the risks, major risks. Okay, but I think I would just say that, like, if you're in a position right now where you are conflicted, you're confused, you're wondering, is this person the one? You're having all kinds of feelings. A little sabbatical could do you some good.
It'll get you together.
30-day sabbatical, because you need clarity.
Yeah. Okay, so we definitely need to zero in on what we mean by sabbatical. You know how I am with words and definitions and all the things.
Okay,
so
yes.
just understanding what a sabbatical is and how it works is helpful, I think, or should be helpful, because understanding helps us move forward with confidence and not just like, be stumbling around. So I've got just like a basic, Merriam-Webster definition of
All
it.
right.
And it's first, I guess it finds its root in teaching. So basically, a sabbatical so the Merriam-Webster definition is a school year free from teaching duties that can be devoted to research, travel, and writing. And traditionally, this occurs every 7th year. There's another definition that says that it's a period of paid leave granted to a university teacher or other worker for study or travel, traditionally 1 year for every 7 years worked. So basically the same thing. Every 7 years you get a sabbatical year and you get to work on your, area of expertise. You get to do travel, you get to, just rest or whatever, which I think is really interesting because it's definitely based even on an even deeper level. It's based on the idea of Sabbath, the seventh day. So this is the seventh year. That's very biblical. I think every 7 years is a Sabbath year. I think. I could be wrong, but it's just the idea of ceasing from your labors, of resting. And Sabbath specifically is about resting in the Lord. And so another definition of sabbatical is relating or appropriate to the Sabbath.
Okay.
So the Sabbath is taking a rest. Specifically ceasing from your own labors.
All right, so connect this to...
And so when we talk about sabbaticals, we want to make a differentiation between that and a break. Okay. This helped me in my mind because when I broke up with my ex, he called me. He had been telling me for a while that we were going to get married. We can get married. I'm just waiting for you to graduate from college. As soon as you graduate, then we'll get married. So we're a month out from my graduation. He calls me and breaks up with me. But the way that he phrased it was kind of like, well, I think we just need a break. I heard break up because break and break up is the same thing to me.
Wow.
Because usually when you taking a break, it's like, okay, well, we gonna go do whatever we want to do and see if we feel like getting back together after some indeterminate period of time. We're gonna take a break. And usually, especially in my experience, don't hear what I'm not saying because y'all know y'all like to do that. In my experience, a break just means that the dude wants to go and do whatever he wants and then come back to the situation and have a fully intact relationship.
Right.
After he done did whatever he wanted to do. And then, you find out that he was dealing with so-and-so on the side. And it's like, oh, but we were on a break. What does that mean? That means we break up. To me, it means we break up because you're going to do things during that break that would necessitate a breakup.
Wow.
In my situation, in my opinion, in that situation.
Yeah.
And so I think there needs to be a differentiation between a break and a sabbatical because Sabbath is holy. It's godly. A Sabbath is a tabernacle in time. And if you are going to take the time to erect the tabernacle or turn your relationship into a temple or a meeting place for God, that is holy. It's not the same thing as just taking a break. I think a sabbatical is taking the time to make a place for God in your relationship. To say, I am dedicating this relationship. First, I'm dedicating myself and I'm dedicating my attachment to this relationship and the relationship itself to you. And the way I'm doing that is by seeking you, by ceasing from my plans and my designs and my ideas for this relationship and seeking you to see what your blueprint and your design for this relationship is. If it is for the relationship to end at the end of the sabbatical period, then that is what I will do. But I'm not doing anything that you didn't tell me to do. And that, I think, is what should constitute a sabbatical versus, oh, we're just on a break and then we'll get back together.
Yeah.
Maybe. I think a sabbatical is a way to invite God into the relationship before you make a covenant with that person.
Wow. Yeah, this is probably not a popular take.
No.
Like people, this isn't something you're going to get on, all the relationship experts' websites or their socials, and they're going to be talking about, hey, take a sabbatical for 30 days,
Yeah. And because that doesn't mean go and find some other place to sow your wild oats or nothing like that. It doesn't mean go start a new relationship with somebody else. It means seeking the Lord for the relationship, whether it is for him to end it or to, strengthen it, whatever the case may be. I think it draws God into it a lot more. And because I've heard so many things about, people being on a break in their relationship. I don't even know how you could do that. If you have a commitment, how do you take a break from commitment? Like, what is
right.
that? But I said it in a few episodes ago. I said it about how there was a girl that I came across.
Across?
Across is crazy. A girl that I came across on
That's funny.
shut up, on TikTok.
Amazing. Shut up.
I like you. Anyway, there's a girl I came across on TikTok, and she was talking about how, you know, she was taking a break from her boyfriend to seek God, to seek God about the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it was mutual. You know what I mean? She didn't, in the video that I saw, it didn't seem like it was mutual. She just kind of felt like she needed to, for God to lead her and for her to hear from God without constantly having the other person chiming in.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was really, really cool to see that other people were doing something similar to what we did.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems like a lot of young ladies, because I was in the comments, and a lot of young ladies are like, oh yeah, we did this. I did this with my boyfriend. And one lady said, I did this with one guy and met another guy and met my spouse while I was on the 30-day break from,
Mm-hmm.
you know, my ex or whatever, which is also
30-day
entirely
rest.
possible.
30-day rest.
Hmm?
Not the 30-day break, right? 30-day rest.
No, they were calling it a break.
Oh, they were calling it a break. Okay.
Because that's what I'm saying. There needs to be a differentiation in language,
Okay.
you know. And they were basically taking a sabbatical, but I don't know. The thing about a sabbatical is I think it should be mutual
Mm-hmm.
and led by the Lord. Some people will
Yeah.
take a sabbatical because they running and they, you know, the Lord, they just trying to buy themselves some time or something, you know. It has to be led by the Lord. And that's the whole point of Sabbath. Is ceasing from your own labors, is being directed by the Lord for everything.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a way to do that in your relationship. And so I've seen it as a trend. It's been happening, but I think that the way that it's being labeled probably needs an upgrade.
Yeah, that makes sense. Makes total sense. So let's tell the story a little bit.
Yeah.
That I don't know exactly. I don't have the timeline in front of me, but we were obviously long distance for nearly 5 years, and so our interaction was FaceTime, a lot of FaceTime, and then getting together 3 to 4 times a year, typically, maybe more.
Yeah.
And every time that I dropped you off at the airport, it was very difficult.
Oh yeah.
Some of those times felt like it was the last time I was going to see you, because prior to dropping you off, we'd kind of been working up to it. You know, we're going to say, okay, we're going to get together. And then after this, we're going to take a 30-day or a 2-week or whatever sabbatical to seek the Lord.
Yeah, our first sabbatical was after our first date in Nashville, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. It's wild. And we did it again. I remember specifically dropping you off in St. Louis. That was really difficult. Oh my gosh, that was tough.
Yeah, St. Louis was the worst one for me.
Yeah.
For you, I think Nashville was probably worse for you.
No. They're both
They're
pretty
both bad.
bad.
St. Louis was like, there were people like in the airport looking at me like, do you need help? Because I was like, I had to go to the bathroom and collect myself, because the minute that I walked into the airport and the doors closed behind me, I just lost it. Like how am I never going to see this person again?
Yeah.
How is this possible? I remember just going through the cycle of these sabbaticals, and we had a few, and I remember my family witnessing me going through this, you know, this tenuous feeling. And that would have been between the years of 2014 and 2016, because in 2016 I moved out to Branson for 4 months, and then I moved to Lancaster at the beginning of 2017. And I never moved back home, so they didn't get to see that part of our relationship evolving. But during those 2 years of trying to figure out, if we even were going to stay together and actually cultivate a relationship, going through those sabbaticals. I remember one time I was talking to my sister about it, and she's like, wow, and then the next thing I knew, she's calling me to her studio because she had written a song about it for us. The words were something like, how can you just tell your heart to stop feeling what it feels and walk away from everything that ever felt real?
I remember that song. Yeah.
You never heard it?
I remember that song.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And it was just like, it was my heart's cry at the time. And I remember just feeling like I don't know how to walk away from this. I don't know if I could. I'm willing to, but I don't know how. I know it will hurt because I've already tried to just do it for a couple weeks. And I know that it hurts,
Yeah, I mean, it was difficult. You would always say, feels like you lost an arm, when we left each other, or it feels like you couldn't breathe. And I felt the same way, so it was super real. And we did it multiple times. And it was for the purpose of seeking the Lord, cutting through the clutter, because our connection is so strong, it can cloud the voice of the Spirit, honestly, and making sure that we're making sound decisions. And so it was really difficult, because in so many ways, like for me, I felt like I'd been given everything I had prayed for, but now God was asking me to give it up. It was very Abraham and Isaac, and I had to put you on the altar. And so the sabbaticals were, yes, sabbaticals, but with the very real possibility of breakup every time. So it was highly risky. And it was like, yes, of course we're going to talk again, because we scheduled it. We're going to have a talk, but I didn't know what you were experiencing. You didn't know what I was experiencing, because we had no communication during those times. And so getting back together, I didn't know if you were going to come back and say, hey, I've had this revelation or this realization, and I don't think we should keep on moving forward, or if I was going to do the same thing to you. But I will say, I had to be completely willing to let you go.
Yeah.
And the sabbatical actually went through the exercise of letting you go. It was emotional and physical. Like it actually, you would actually do it. And doing that allowed our relationship to die to everything that it needed to die to, so that it could be resurrected to what it needed to be resurrected to. So we did this iterative process. It happened multiple times, and every time I feel like it strengthened the relationship. I feel like it allowed me to focus on my personal growth and to re-enthrone God on the throne of my heart, to make sure that I was truly chasing after him, because that was the whole premise of our relationship. Was I knew that if I chased after God, whoever was running next to you, she'd be the one. And you had to do the same thing. But I'm curious, from your perspective, as we would have these sabbaticals, were you struggling as much as I was? Like, was it as serious for you, like the pursuit of God? Because in some ways, I felt like I was the one who had to chase God, and that it didn't feel like you had to do that. You already had that, and it was me that had to go through that. Like, what were you doing during those times? What were you focused on, and how urgently were you focused on it?
I was praying and fasting and talking to family and mentors, and getting their input when I felt it was needed. Getting encouragement when I felt it was needed. This is a very unique process, and so for most of our relationship, we haven't had like somebody else to look at for a pattern.
That's a fact. I couldn't find anybody with our profile.
Right.
Period.
And so
yeah.
So yeah, that there was that. So, even taking advice from people had to be pretty general because it couldn't be specific, that's for sure, because there was our situation was so unique. And so that was interesting. But during these times, I think, I mean, I don't know if I was feeling as intensely as you. Like, what was going through your mind during these sabbaticals?
I just know, like, there was a certain amount of, okay, we're not spending this time investing in our relationship. So I do need to spend some of that time, doing some things I wasn't doing, But by and large, it was
using the sabbaticals to catch up on projects. Sounds like you.
no, but I mean, there is probably a little bit of, that there's freed up bandwidth to be able to, move some of those things forward, because there are a lot of things moving in my life professionally at the time. But my main focus was using the majority of that time that we would have spent together in seeking the Lord. I was studying super deep. I was studying everything. The Lord gave me a list. We call it the battle plan. He gave me the battle plan, and I was knocking out things on that battle plan. To this day, I didn't finish everything, but I think I finished the essential things, because some of it's probably just stuff that I had put on there to be thorough that wasn't really necessary. But yeah, I mean, I was studying, fasting, and praying a lot and crying a lot, really feeling it, but I was also letting it die. I was letting my attachments die. Not just in this area, but in every area, like especially professionally. There were certain projects that were really important to me, but I let them die. I had to go through that process. I remember one specific night. I can't even exactly remember, but it was us, but it was also another project, and it kind of, I had to let them both die, and it looked like they were both going to end. And I remember going to a playground at like 10 p.m. and there's nobody else there. It was just a place where I could go and just talk to God. And I was yelling at him. I was angry. I'm like, are you even there? Do you even care? Do you hear me? What's going on? Like, this is crazy. How could you give me these things, and then give me these dreams, give me these desires, give me even the woman that I was praying for, and now I have to give her up. It was really rough. That was a spiritual formation moment for me. Because honestly, I didn't get anything big during that moment. But there's just, I guess maybe I've always had the gift of knowing. It's like I'm sitting there questioning everything and yelling, but in my heart, I'm not really, I know you're there. I know you hear me and blah, 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 but this is really frustrating, and I'm really angry at you. And I was.
And I think that moment sounds like, it sounds like a turning point, because in that moment you felt safe enough with God to be angry, to say how you were actually feeling, and not, straighten your back, straighten your tie, and carry on. You felt comfortable enough. You felt safe enough to say, I'm angry with you. A lot of people think that they can't be angry with God, that they shouldn't be angry with God, but the relationship with God that you have should be such that you can tell him what you're feeling no matter what it is.
Yeah.
And he's our creator, he's our father. And just think about one of his names. I think it's El Shaddai, but it's the many-breasted one. And it kind of gives us a little bit of a window into what might be considered a feminine aspect of God, and how in the natural with children, they say now that, like, a child's behavior is like 800% worse with their mother than they are with anyone else.
Yeah.
And it's because they believe, that their mother is the safest place in the world. Like it's built into them. It's programmed into them that they can be and do any number of things. They can be exactly how they want to be. They can feel exactly how they feel and express that to their mother, and she will always love them. There is a level of safety that is unmatched with anyone else. And so they save how they feel, and, I've noticed it with David is like, he'll be perfectly fine until I walk in the door. And then it's, he's excited to see me, but then, he'll start acting out or start, having an attitude or something like that. And, whoever had him will be like, he wasn't like this, when you weren't here. And it's because he waited to unleash however he was feeling on me, because he knew that this would be a no judgment zone and that I'd love him regardless. Yeah. And that's a bond that children have with their mother for all of their life. Yeah. Or that they should have with their mother all of their life. And I think that was what you tapped into there, was the nurturing aspect of God and really understanding you're not going to leave me if I tell you how I feel. You're not going to forsake me if I tell you how I feel. And a lot of times when we are able to express ourselves to the Lord authentically, it opens the way for him to actually move and act in our lives, because we're not in the way. Yeah. We've sometimes we dam up the flow of our own blessings because of our feelings and our unforgiveness and our resentment and our anger toward God. And we don't know that that's what it is. And then once it's expressed, suddenly we feel lighter and we feel like, right. And then things start turning around and we're like, well, I don't know how that happened. And you didn't realize that you tapped into a different aspect of your relationship with God.
Yeah. That's a good point. That's good. So if we hadn't taken these intentional sabbaticals, what do you think would have happened in our relationship?
I don't know. It's hard to say, because we did. So I don't know what would have happened if we didn't. We probably wouldn't be here if we didn't. I don't think you would have trusted any information you got if you didn't if you didn't hone your ear during that time. If I didn't do the work, pray the prayers and obey the obedience, like if I didn't do what I was supposed to do, if you didn't do what you were supposed to do, those were times for us to like square up with the Lord and make sure that we were on track for what he wanted us to do, and not influence each other during that time. And I think if we hadn't, I don't know that either one of us would have trusted the conclusions we came to without each other influencing those conclusions. So yeah, I think if we didn't do it, we probably wouldn't be together. I mean, maybe we would.
Maybe.
But maybe it would have been harder for us to get together.
Yeah, no, I definitely think so. I keep on coming back to this because throughout that time, I felt I was the one who was initiating these sabbaticals. I felt I was one who's questioning more than you. And like, if I just got my act together and asked you to marry me, like, you would have said yes. Is that true?
To a degree. I would have said yes whenever you asked, because I just knew you were my person. Yeah. And I mean, I was happier with you than I was with anyone else. So I was just like, but also I think I have, it's a strength overextended, but I have the habit of just kind of like going with whatever, rather than trying to assert my own wants or needs or whatever. And the first sabbatical was for sure your idea. But I just took it as like, okay, well, if he's going to be working on it, then I'll work on it too.
Yeah.
You know, it's not that I didn't need it. It just didn't occur to me to ask for it.
Right. Right.
You know, you knew what you needed, and I didn't really need that. It was odd for me to not need time from someone.
Mm-hmm.
That I never needed time from you. I never wanted it. But I understood the necessity and the benefit of doing what we were doing.
Yeah.
And after the first one, I was inclined to continue doing it because you came back.
Yeah.
So I just had to trust that if you were for me, you would keep coming back.
Whew, man.
Yeah, that whole, man, there's so many things swirling in my head. What do you think the benefits are of sabbaticals? Or is that something you want to talk about later?
No, that's great. I believe the benefits are...
or we should say the benefit of doing a Christ-centered sabbatical from a Christ-centered relationship.
Yeah, and let's define how we did it. I'm not saying this is the best way, but we prayed and we both agreed. You could just feel it. Like we get to these milestones, these checkpoints. Like, okay, it would feel like, is this supposed to, like, okay, this is dragging on. Like, are we just wasting our time? Does God have something else for us to do? Or do you feel like this is about to go to a new level? Does the Lord really want that? And also, and so let me finish that. So we would get to, we both pretty much most of the time, like we feel like consensus that it's time to do something. Or one of us, I think, like you said, like initially I did. So I would say that to anybody. Like if you feel it and your partner, a person you're dating doesn't, that's okay. Like they can honor and respect that. What I think it does is, they always say absence makes the heart grow fonder. It puts a test on the relationship to see if it'll withstand any test of distance or time. So I think that's really valuable. I think it also helps you die to unhealthy attachments that you might have and helps you re-enthrone God as the center of your life. Because that's the thing about it. Like people always talk about put God at the center of your relationship. Well, no, God needs to be at the center of both of your individual relationships and then in the center of the marriage. You know what I'm saying? So you have to have an individual relationship with him, and the relationship you have as a couple and centering him as a couple is really only as strong as your individual relationships with him.
That's so good.
So you have to take time with him. He is your greatest relationship that requires the greatest investment of time. And especially as you're dating, especially if you're doing long distance, like, we're talking hours on the phone, right? Those are hours that we're spending with each other on what is one of the most important decisions, for sure. But I wasn't spending those hours with the Lord individually, right? And so this was a chance to, just like if you were fasting, you reinvest that time into spiritual things. I would reinvest that time into him. And I think that was the greatest benefit of all. And one of the sub motives was I was doing it because of you, but I was pursuing him for him. He was my reward. And I had to check that all the time. I had to make sure, Lord, please help me not to be pursuing you just because I want to get married to Mina. So I had to keep that prayer in my heart all the time. But I believe it helps with all those things. And it helps you get clear of the emotions of the relationship. I think it helps you do a good emotional reset. And I believe it helps you get mental clarity when you're not in the throes of a relationship every day. There's a resting that can settle into the relationship. And lastly, if you're really questioning it, it gives you that chance to step back, and it could give you the strength to come back and end it, if that's what you're supposed to do. And if your resolve gets stronger to end it as you keep on going, that's a good sign that, you should probably go in that direction, But for us, like, there's only one time where it was like, this is over. and then the Lord intervened. And I've already told that story in a previous episode. But for me, it was the draw strengthened, and not just necessarily romantically, although that was there. But honestly, there were times during the sabbaticals and during, different seasons of our relationship where the focus really was not on the like the feeling. It's not, the focus is, the focus wasn't always on the romantic anyway, but it wasn't, the feeling wasn't even there. It was like, no, this is work. Like, we're doing the work to be able to be together. It's like I almost had to turn that part of it off, and so my judgment wasn't clouded by how amazing our romantic chemistry was. And I had to really assess the relationship. So I think that's one of the benefits. It's you can kind of detach from the emotion of it and really assess the relationship. So those are some things that I would say. Do you have anything that you would add?
Well, just a reiteration that one of the benefits of taking a sabbatical or a Sabbath in the relationship is putting God where he belongs. Because when you put God where he belongs, everything else finds its natural order.
Yeah.
Putting him on the throne of your heart, making sure that he's in the right spot.
Yeah.
And making sure that your person is not an idol.
Yeah.
It really helps you get your priorities straight.
Yeah.
If you're intentional about it.
And I would say that to anybody who is questioning a relationship, or who loves someone very deeply and thinks this could be the one. Are you willing to let it go?
That right there. I have a similar question, and it is God enough?
Right.
If he asks you, I'll let Abraham and Isaac on Mount Moriah to give you back the thing that he promised you, is he enough? In Genesis 22, when Abraham and Isaac are on their way to Moriah, Isaac starts putting some things together. He sees that he's there. He sees his father's there. He sees their servants. He sees the donkey. And he sees the wood for the sacrifice. But there's no sacrifice with them. There's no lamb, no goat, nothing that they've brought with them to offer as a sacrifice to the Lord. And so Isaac looks at his father. He looks at the evidence, and he looks at his father and he says, I see the evidence. What I don't see is the sacrifice. And Abraham's answer is probably often overlooked, but one of the most poignant things about the story. And he says, God will provide himself a lamb. But if you just look at it as God will provide himself, we get to the mountain, and from this story comes the name of God that people invoke when they need something. And that is Yahweh Yireh, or Jehovah Jireh. It means, in the mountain of the Lord it shall be seen. But the thing that I zero in on here for the context of this conversation is God will provide himself. Is he enough? And you have to ask yourself, in this situation, when the Lord gives you what he's promised you. Isaac was a promise from the Lord, a promise that he fulfilled. And then he turned around and asked the recipient of the promise to offer the promise back to him as a sacrifice. Is God enough in this scenario? When you feel you've received your promise and he asks you to give it back, is God enough? Is he? And then obviously he is the answer to that, right?
Yeah.
He's more than enough. If you have God, you have everything. That's really what Yahweh Yireh means. Like, if you have God, If you have him, you don't need anything else because he will provide everything else. It's not just about him providing. It's about him providing himself. And Yahweh Yireh means in the mountain of the Lord it shall be seen. The mountain of the Lord is Moriah. That is the site where the temple was built, where Solomon's temple was built, later Ezekiel's temple, later Herod's temple. That's the site of the first time God asked someone to give the promise back as a sacrifice. And that's what he did with Messiah. He promised Messiah, and then he required Messiah as a sacrifice. And in some weird, twisted way, the people were willing to give the sacrifice. Maybe not the way Abraham was.
Right.
Not in faith, not necessarily, but they were willing.
Yeah.
And they did. And so here, when we think about Yahweh Yireh, when we think about Jehovah Jireh, we ask him for things. We darn well better be ready to give back the thing that we're asking him for. And that is what we faced with this. And this is what you will face with a relationship that you're in. Most likely, if the Lord has promised you a spouse, he's going to give it to you, right? Because he fulfills his promises as long as you participate in that promise and in the progress and the process that comes with promises. He doesn't lie. He'll do what he says. But the test of love is sacrifice. You know? Love always includes sacrifice. If it doesn't, you have to question if it's love.
Yeah.
So this Abraham situation, even though it's played out in a very specific way in the scripture, like it's quite common in the human experience. Whenever the Lord gives us something, he always wants us to give it back to him. Not because he's cruel and anything like that. It's because he always wants to give us back better.
Yeah. Right. Yes, he absolutely does. I can attest to that.
And that question, is God enough? Not just is he enough, but is he enough for you?
That's the question.
Right.
Is because God is enough.
Because he is enough. He is enough for any and every scenario and situation you can come up with. But is he enough for you?
Is he enough for you? And that is the test. And so this is a really interesting thought. You've said it before, marriage is for kingdom. So marriage has a specific purpose. It's for progression and for kingdom, and it's a covenant. It's meant to mirror the intimacy that God has with his bride, his people. It's a lot of things. But you can get married for other reasons. You can get married, not and have it not be a kingdom marriage, and it's probably you can probably have a nice, happy life. But it's like, what do you want? What do you really want? Do you both of you really want God? So, kind of what we're talking about in so many ways. The sabbatical, it's a great principle, a great practice for anybody. But what we're talking about is he enough? And taking this intentional rest with God is we're assuming that both of you are chasing after God and you want the kind of kingdom marriage that's going to bring kingdom to this earth, where you're going to be able to be in ministry together and be equally yoked side by side with the Lord and performing the work that he has for you to do as a couple. That's my assumption. And it's important that if that's what you desire, you need to know if that's what your potential partner desires. Because I read this. This is super interesting. I've been reading this book by Leif Hetland called Called to Reign, Living and Loving from a Place of Rest. And he talks about chair 1, 2, and 3. Chair 1 is where you operate in your identity as a son or daughter of God from a place of rest, knowing that you are his child. And because of that, you have intimacy with him, There's no barriers between you and him. You have intimacy with him, and you have an inheritance.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, it's because you are. It's be, have, do have. It's because you already are something. You have access. You have everything that you need. Therefore, you do certain things. Chair 2 flips that and says, I have to do certain things so I can have certain things so I can be something. And you constantly are earning and striving and performing so that you can be worthy or become a son or daughter of God or whatever the case may be. And he says, in his estimation, over 90% of Christians, so-called Christians, live from chair 2, where they are operating from earth to heaven rather than from heaven down to earth.
Mm.
And then chair 3 is just people who don't believe at all. So they're operating as, fatherless in so many ways. But chair 2 is like having a house but not having a home. And it's like really being a spiritual orphan. Even though you've got a father, you're not accessing the blessings. So I say all that to say, he wrote this, and it really struck me. He said, there is a difference between having Christians everywhere and having sons and daughters who know how to bring heaven to earth everywhere. The difference between Christians and sons and daughters is the same difference between chair 1 and chair 2. Even when both are Christians, they are unequally yoked if they sit in different chairs. The differences are that significant. So in this relationship, this is just a really good chance to see if kingdom is your desire, kingdom marriage is your desire. The sabbatical can be a really wonderful opportunity to see if that's the equal desire of your potential partner.
That's so true. Because I'm thinking about the question of, even if you guys are both in kingdom and you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, like, are you the right person for the job? Because you guys might both love the Lord and both, but your blueprints aren't aligned.
Yeah.
Yeah. You might both be like, yeah, we want to build the kingdom of God, but you might not be called to build it in the same way. And a sabbatical is a good way to find out if you are the person for the job, right? This is the counting up the cost that Luke talks about.
Yeah.
How many of you, if you're going to build a tower, don't count up the cost first? This is the most important, one of the most important relationships that you will ever have to maintain. So of course you want to count up the cost before you build a whole marriage that isn't built on the strong foundation of the solid rock, And so a sabbatical is a great way to ascertain whether or not you are the person for the job, to really figure out if you have there's several scriptures swirling. So we got Luke, right, with the counting up the cost. We got
Luke 14:28, by the way.
Yes, I know where it is. I just wanted you to do that.
No, you did it.
I have it written down.
Oh, snap.
Yeah, Luke 14:28. And then there's Proverbs 18:22. Whoso findeth a wife findeth a good thing and obtaineth favor from the Lord. And then Proverbs 31:10. I've got several translations in my head, but who can find a virtuous woman, for her value is above rubies. And then you think about just what a valuable piece of jewelry, like, where do you find valuable jewelry? It's not just like hanging out in the street. Sometimes people drop it because they're not taking care of it, and they lose it for whatever reason. But most of the time, you use this phrase, and I love it, by and large, where you're going to find jewelry is in the jewelry store, surrounded by other jewelry, surrounded by other jewels, and other pieces of great value. And it will be in a setting that is that is conducive to its beauty and its greatness, and it will be nestled in a soft place, and you can go into the grocery store. The grocery store is crazy. Go into the to the jewelry store and look behind the glass, and it is understood, even though the glass is there, it's understood that you can't touch said piece of jewelry unless you ask for it. You know?
Yep.
And even then, you can look at it, you can try it on, and you might have to put it back when they tell you what the price tag is. And so a sabbatical is a good way for you, if the wife is this, following the analogy, if the wife is this piece of rare jewelry, if she's for values above rubies, right? She's that valuable, and you're going into the jewelry store to try and figure out if you can pay for what you see. That sabbatical is kind of like, looking at the price tag. You counting up the cost, deciding, can I pay what this will require of me? Do I have the liquid assets to be able to pay for this now? Do I need to save up for it? Is it in my price range? Am I the right person for this piece of jewelry? Am I the right person for the job? Should I just leave it behind?
Yeah.
So I think a sabbatical is a good time for that too. It's just like counting up the costs to see if, hey, can I sustain, can I maintain this rare jewel,
That's good.
at least from the perspective of a man,
Yeah, that's good.
God's daughter is something that should not be tampered with. She's not something that should be toyed with or treated anything below her value. And so, you gonna rob the jewelry store, or you gonna pay what she's worth? And a sabbatical is a really good way for you to figure out, can I do this? Do I want to do this? Because some people, are only labeled high maintenance because the person who's in charge of maintaining them can't handle it.
Whoa.
Yeah. If a person is a millionaire, they're not worried about how often their wife gets their nails done. They're not worried about the price tag that comes with the clothing that she wears, especially if she's making him look good. You know what I mean? If you got a lot of money, you're not worried about whether or not your husband buys a bunch of equipment and gear and things like that, because the maintenance is there. Sometimes we don't have the power, the mindset, or the pockets to maintain what we're after. And we need to be honest about that. The sabbatical is a great time to be honest about that.
That's good. And to be clear, what you're saying, like as far as being the right one for the job, is do your blueprints align?
Yeah.
Right. Because you can be, believers have lots of things in common, but you really do need to look at that. If you're getting married for kingdom, can this person walk your blueprint with you? And I will just say, sometimes you don't have full clarity on that, and maybe it's really the principle that supersedes that is just hearing the voice of the Lord and following it, because you might marry someone who doesn't have clarity about their blueprint, but you see it, and you trust the Lord that you are to play a role in nurturing them into it and helping them see it. So right. There's that can happen for sure.
Yeah, because potential. I don't think a man is anything but potential until they are paired with a womb that matches them.
Whoa.
That's a whole nother situation. But you have to marry some potential. You know what I mean? Like you have to. Yeah. There has to be something there, because, like we've done for each other, iron sharpens iron. You're supposed to bring out the best in each other, and become better versions of yourselves as you push each other and act as mirrors, and really help each other to to become what God has called us to be and walk each other's blueprints, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So that's necessary. And I don't want that to sound superficial or what I said previously. I realize it could probably sound superficial or even, what's the word? Materialistic.
About the money.
Yeah, but it's not about.
No, you're speaking in a parable.
Yeah, for sure. But you know,
he that hath ears to hear. Amen.
Well, yes, but I just meant, you know, these are the pockets that you need to have are spiritual pockets. Do you have the spiritual assets to maintain, you know, the thing that you're interested in acquiring? You know, like if the Lord is going to give you a wife, a wombed woman, if he is going to give you access to divine favor, because that's what a wife is. She is access to divine favor. If you are going to get access to divine favor from the Lord, are you able to maintain that? Do you know how to use it? Do you have the capacity to take care of it? Do you got the spiritual pockets to maintain what he has given you? Do you have a place to put that thing where it's not going to end up getting stolen by somebody else or getting misused, or you know what I mean, or you being targeted because you don't have the right security system to keep that thing secure and safe, you know, like that kind of thing. I think obviously it's all spiritual what I'm talking about, but sometimes it's natural too. Sometimes fellas be after, you know, something and they like it and they think it's cute. It's all fun and games until them pockets that she's pulling on is yours. Then all of a sudden, oh, she's this and she's that. But it's like, did you know that before you got married? Did you know that? Because if you did, then whose fault is this?
Right. No, I think last little thing I would say, kind of in that vein, I've known people where they didn't do this. They didn't count the cost. They didn't really step back and assess. They launched headlong into a relationship, and basically they had to go through their hell, after the marriage. We kind of went through our hell before, so we can get to heaven that is our marriage. So it can work out both ways. I'm not saying it can't, but
while you waiting, you might as well.
And I'm a proponent for following the Lord's voice regardless. You follow the Lord's voice regardless, but as a principle and as a wisdom, nugget, I would say, take your time, take a step back, do some of that hard work before you get married, and it'll greatly benefit your marriage. Because once you get married, you sprint. You can sprint toward your blueprint. And particularly on this area of blueprint and what you're called to do in your life, as much clarity as you can get ahead of time with your potential spouse is super important. Because I've known people who got in and, the other person was jealous, and they kind of put on an ultimatum and say, your blueprint or me.
Dang.
And what are you going to do in that situation?
Right.
Because especially if you're a believer and you don't want a divorce, that. Anyway, it's just good. I heard somebody say recently something that was pretty hurtful, but it is like, whoa, yeah. It was like a high achieving person, like someone who matters. It might have even been like Jeff Bezos or something like that. But basically he said 80% of the problems in your life come because you married the wrong person.
Dang.
Yikes.
I saw a similar quote, but in the other way, from someone who was talking to, he's like a 93-year-old billionaire.
Yeah.
And he was saying that most of his success, most of your success in life comes from the person you marry. The person that you end up with, the person that your spouse, they're like 90. It was a higher, he said like 90 something percent, I think, of your success will come from the person that you married. I was like, dang. So it is a pretty big decision. It affects everything, and it shouldn't be entered into lightly. And so a sabbatical is a way to create a tabernacle in the relationship. You know, in Proverbs 18, it talks about favor from the Lord. And that favor means that the Lord will lean toward you in unusual kindness. It talks about part of the definition has to do with tent pegs and how he literally will erect a tabernacle between you. Like your union creates a tabernacle. The connection between the two of you and being in covenant with him is in and of itself a sacred place for him to come through and live in. A portable place for his presence to go with you wherever you go.
Yeah.
And so that right there, like, tells me right there, like, okay, this relationship is something else. If it's going to be a way to host heaven on earth, then we got to make sure that we're working with the right materials, you know? And like I said, it's access to divine favor, and so you want something that's going to be sturdy and solid, and something that can actually host the King of Heaven, you know?
Yeah.
And of course, tabernacles are places of sacrifice. So I think a sabbatical is a good way to show love.
Yes.
Is by sacrificing your time and your attention. And sometimes, like, if you're fasting and praying, you're literally sacrificing yourself to the Lord on behalf of this relationship. It is creating, I mean, you don't have a tabernacle without sacrifice.
Yeah.
You don't have a marriage without sacrifice. Nicholas Sparks, he's a romance writer. He said, love requires sacrifice, but it's worth it. And then I have another one from Francois Fenelon, I think his name is. If we love him infinitely more than we do ourselves, we make an unconditional sacrifice. Here it is that the Spirit teaches us all truth, for all truth is eminently contained in this sacrifice of love, where the soul strips itself of everything to present itself to God. And I think that can be what we dedicate ourselves to in a time of sabbatical, is stripping our souls of everything and presenting it to God. Not just in the hope that he'll make this relationship happen, but also with the intention to completely give it up if you need to, if he calls you to.
Yeah.
To make your relationship with him preeminent.
Yeah.
And the most important. And to say your relationship, our relationship, my relationship with you is more important than any other relationship that I can have. And if you tell me that this is not the one you called me to, I'm willing to offer it to you.
Yeah. Is he enough? Yes, he is. But is he enough for you? That's the question. It's a question you have to answer.
And a sabbatical is a great time to do it.
Yep. Yeah. So we told you this would be kind of like an advertisement, you know?
Yeah.
For sabbatical. As you can tell, we're pretty positive on that. I think it was one of the keys for our relationship.
For sure.
It's strengthened every facet of our relationships with God and allowed us to ultimately be together. But it also got us in a healthy place emotionally where we'd be okay if we wouldn't be together. It would have hurt.
Oh, it would have hurt so bad.
Would have hurt really bad. But it's not like I didn't go through it. You know, I did the simulations over and over again with God.
Yeah.
And he kept on saying, you know, so every time I did it, I leaned further into him. And to the point where he truly was and is my solid rock. And that's what he was trying to do. He didn't want us to build a relationship centered on one another. It had to be centered on him, because I believe he knew what he needed to do through us. So he had to build an edifice that could house the anointing that he was going to put on our relationship, and that we're not unique in that.
No.
He would like to do that with a lot of people. And I think
it says, whoso findeth a wife. Whoever finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favor or God leaning toward you in unusual kindness from the Lord.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's as much as people like to say that, oh, well, y'all are different. Everybody can be different.
Yeah, right.
You know, I was thinking about the shenanigans that you used to pull when we were on sabbaticals. You talked about
what
you talked about one time when you changed. We had like a, what is it called, on the calendar?
Google Calendar
we had
invite.
Google Calendar invite where you would set that for the next time we would talk after the sabbatical was over, and you would change like the little notes in the sabbatical. So we talking cute about how we stayed away from each other for, these predetermined periods of time because the Lord told us to. But this man was over here writing me notes. He couldn't stay away. He couldn't stay completely away. Remember when we were communicating to each other through assistants? This man invented an assistant so that he could talk to me indirectly. And so
not during sabbaticals. We didn't
Demetrius, yes, that was during a sabbatical. Why else would you be talking to me?
We did that just for fun.
No, it wasn't just for fun. It was during a sabbatical. That's how it got started, because you wanted to change the calendar time and you needed to communicate that to me, and you didn't know how. So you invented an assistant. And I was like, well, I guess I'll invent one too. So I invented one. Timmy 7.
Timmy 7. Timmy 7. Timi. That's right. And I was Demetrius.
Demetrius.
I had Demetrius, who's my assistant. That's funny.
So, we did the sabbatical thing, but we also didn't do it perfectly, obviously, because we could not stay away from each other. We were finding creative ways to still communicate, but it had the desired effect. Bless the Lord.
So yeah, I'm glad you ended on that, because you don't have to do it perfectly.
No.
And the Lord doesn't require your perfection. He requires your commitment.
Yeah.
And I think the work that we did during those sabbaticals shaped our relationship in great ways, but it was His grace still.
Yeah, for sure.
Ultimately, that made anything work for us. So sabbaticals, y'all.
Would you guys try it? Let us know in the comments, because I want to know if that's something, because I know a lot of you guys are single, but once you get into, the relationship that you feel God has for you, would this be something you'd be interested in trying? Let us know. If you are here at the end of this episode, you are expecting something very specific, and so we dare not leave you without a smile on your face. Before I say that, y'all gotta like, comment, subscribe, write us messages, let us know if there are topics that you want us to broach on the podcast. And also, if you want to see this work continue and get even better, you can make a donation if you like. We really appreciate when you guys do that. That's not why we're doing this, but we appreciate when you do it. All right. Oh, also just stay tuned and pay attention to community pages and whatnot and socials.
Yeah.
Because we're full steam ahead on a lot of things. We're planning to release a lot of intellectual property this year, and so we will definitely keep you guys posted. Just pay attention to whatever way you're connected to us. Okay? We'll let you know. All right, babe. The smile for your face, and go.
Okay. It's yeah. Prior to our dating, I mean, the sabbatical with you wasn't the first time I tried that idea. In previous relationships, taking a break or whatever. It didn't call it sabbatical, but it was with the intention of just, hey, let's step back, whatever. And one of the girlfriends that I had, it didn't work out with her because she got really mad at me over the fact that I had no sense of direction. So I packed up my stuff and right.
We love you guys.
Oh my gosh.
So much.
I
Thank
hated
you
myself
for
for that.
sticking around for that. I hope it made you
didn't like
smile.
it? You didn't like that? I picked up my stuff and right. Sense of direction. That's funny.
I gotcha. I'm with you.
Oh, mercy.
That one was all right. It's great. I love your jokes.
Comment how much you loved that one and affirm me, people. Thank you. Thanks for watching the episode. We love you all.
We love you
See you
guys.
next one.
Go build your own bridges. Bye.
Okay, bye.